G'day, I am Mordechai Becher,
And I am Yoshua Karsh.
and welcome to Two Rabbis and a Podcast. And this is really part two of our previous discussion about the mitzvah, the commandment, the goal, the ideal of living in the land of Israel. And we had discussion about that mitzvah and about the what is the ideal, and are there indications that it's perhaps messianic? The flowering of Israel, the mountains giving their fruits and flowers, the kibbutz goliath, the ingathering of exiles of millions of Jews to the land of Israel, the flourishing of Torah, of the economy, having an infrastructure. These are all incredible historically, and I think I could argue miraculous.
I agree. So, one of the things we've been talking about, Rabbi Becher and I, is the the confrontation between reality and dream that many of us imagine what it would be like during the time of Mashiach, often guided by some general uh, sense of what's supposed to happen during that time. And I think for a lot of people who live there or have lived there in Israel in recently, um, on the one hand, and you can look around and see the kibbutz goliaths and the greening and all these other kind of amazing things that are now there for the viewing in Israel and experiencing. But at the same time, look around and see a lot of other things that weren't part of that dream. Politics, disagreements between people, the fact that there are people that don't share the same vision that we do. And that conflict between the reality and our dream, I think, can be translated to many people as we're not there. And this stuff that we're looking at cannot be part of what eventually is the realization of Mashiach because it doesn't match our dream, not necessarily because it's not possible. Because if we stepped up and thought about all the possible scenarios, all the possible ways it could look in the time of Mashiach, it could be that some of these things would be there, but we just don't see any sanctity in it. We don't see any holiness in it. It doesn't look like anything we dreamed of. And therefore, it might push us to think that we are not close to Mashiach coming, and that a lot of the stuff that is presently a part of the experience of living in Israel and the especially when you're talking about the politics, that's going to have to completely change because there's going to be a time nothing like what we're looking at when Mashiach comes, and that doesn't necessarily have to be. It's possible that a lot of what we think of as imperfect elements, it's possible it might still be part of Mashiach, especially like when the Rambam himself suggests that in the time of Mashiach, the one hard reality is there will not be Shibud Malchus. We will not be under the control of other nations. He doesn't insist on many other hard realities.
Yeah, well, at the end of actually last week's Torah portion, there's a comment of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who says that,
In the actual Torah portion.
well, on Bechukosai, there's a comment on that
Okay.
by the Lubavitcher
Okay,
Rebbe
joking.
who talks about people have this idea that our goal is Mashiach. He says that's not correct. He says the idea of a redemption and of a Mashiach is actually a means to an end. The end is the observance of the Torah and the creation of a society in which we come close to God.
Yes.
In order to have that, we need a land, we need independence, we need we need all the infrastructure of Jewish law.
Mm.
He says, but it's not about a messianic time for its own sake. He says that's just simply a mistake. Messianic time is a means to fulfilling the Torah. And he says that's why the Rambam, Maimonides, doesn't deny the possibility there will be miracles.
Right.
He
Right.
says it cannot be that miracles are a requirement. Because
Right.
if they are a requirement, that means you are predicating fulfillment of the Torah on miracles. And we know that the Torah was given to humans to be able to fulfill without miraculous intervention, etc. So it's like, so he says that's how Maimonides looks at it. But I think people do have dreams and visions, and
Yes.
many of those dreams and visions are not based on a deep dive into sources. They're based on having read an article or two here and there in some popular magazine. They
Yeah.
may have heard of something in a podcast, one of the other podcasts, which are not authoritative, right?
Right. Pretty much
Unlike
any
ours,
other podcast.
any
Pretty
other
much any
podcast,
other podcast.
basically,
Just
yeah,
say it straight out. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We said it, right? So, and those visions may not be realistic. Look, we know that some of the early Zionist leaders and visionaries, Theodor Herzl had some incredible visions, and he was right in a number of them. He said, "Yeah, there's going to be a state." Right? I think it's probably successful way beyond his wildest dreams in many
Yes.
ways, but
Yep.
but he thought it would solve the problem of anti-Semitism, which it
Right.
hasn't solved.
At all.
He thought, and he and some of the other early secular Zionists thought that Jews who were not in Israel would just very quickly assimilate. So the state of Israel would have no external burdens, so to speak, or responsibilities. That didn't happen.
No.
But their vision was that if the Jews would become normal,
Right.
quotation marks, I think as one of them put it, when a Jewish prostitute would be arrested by a Jewish policeman in a Jewish city, that will be the. Now, obviously, you also had on the
Yeah.
other side,
Right.
religious Zion, the Mizrahi movement, which stands for Merkaz Ruchani. Merkaz Ruchani means the spiritual center of the world. Now,
Yeah.
to some degree, Israel has become the spiritual center of the Jewish world
Yeah.
in ways that it was unimaginable hundreds of years ago. In terms of just the sheer output of Torah publications, Torah knowledge, the fact that almost any religious kid from virtually every community around the world, it's a given that after high school they're going to go to Israel, year, 2 years,
Right.
whatever, seminary, yeshiva. It's that there's this, and if you look around, people outside of Israel look around at their teachers and their rabbis, and so on and so forth. How many of them have been in Israel and picked up some of the Torah of Israel from their experience in Israel and now are spreading it? So it has become America's. Now, obviously, it's an imperfect spiritual center because, as
Yeah.
you pointed out, there's so many problems.
Yeah.
Right? What do you focus on? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are some who would focus on. I mean, I've had discussions. I once was brought to a community as scholar in residence, which does happen.
On occasion.
Yes.
Every once in a while.
Yeah. And I was not aware of this, but there's a yeshiva in the community,
Okay.
which is rabidly anti-Zionist.
Okay.
Now,
For Americans, that's rabidly. Go ahead.
Rabidly. And I don't use the term lightly. And
No.
I was not aware of this. My normal drasha, my normal speeches, right? There's lots of references to Israel, to the IDF, to the, it's like, it's pretty heavily Zionist. And these guys are sitting there boiling. I could see around, I'm looking in the audience, and I'm seeing people like looking like I don't know what they wanted to do. And then afterwards, they obviously came over to me and argued. And their main argument was based on Vayol Moshe, the Satmar Rebbe, Rav Yoel Teitelbaum, who makes the argument that the establishment of the State of Israel was prohibited by Jewish law. 3 famous oaths which are mentioned in the book of Song of Songs, Hishbati etchem, I made you take an oath, daughters of Jerusalem. It's repeated. The Gemara in Ketuvot, 110, says that God extracted some oaths from us. And the nature of that is unclear. What do you mean? When did this happen? How did we make the oaths? Was there an assembly? What exactly happened? Unclear, not explained in the Gemara. The Gemara says one oath was not to rebel against the nations. There was another oath, shelo yalu b'choma, which is unclear what that means. They should not ascend as a wall. So some say what that means, no en masse aliyah. Others say it means don't take Israel by force. So don't rebel against the nations, don't take Israel by force, mass aliyah. And there's a third oath that the nations should not oppress the Jews excessively. Type of reminds me of a statement attributed to Winston Churchill, who was asked, what's the definition of an anti-Semite? And he says, an anti-Semite is someone who hates Jews more than absolutely necessary. So okay, don't oppress us too much. Right?
Yes, whatever that means.
Whatever. Right. In any case, the Satmar Rebbe, a third of his book, Vayoel Moshe, is dedicated to the Hebrew language, the holiness of Hebrew. A third is dedicated to the mitzvah of settling Israel, living in Israel. Actually, more than a third. That's actually probably about a half. And then the first part is dedicated to these three oaths. And he maintains that the establishment of Israel was a rebellion against the nations of the world and was taking Israel by force. And since it was done by non-religious Jews, many, he seems to see it as all, but he says that it cannot be messianic in any way. Not possible. Right? He says the messianic establishment of the settlement of Jews in Israel will be miraculous, will be done by the righteous and only by the Mashiach, and the establishment of Israel is a contravention of that. So that's what these guys confronted me with after my lecture, which was not on that subject at all. I don't even remember what I was talking about, sharpness, whatever. But bam,
And it just so happened you were unprepared for such questions. They caught you totally off guard. You've never researched the subject at all, never spoken about it. And suddenly these people approach you with these questions.
And my response was, okay, let's say you're right. I said, okay, 78 years ago, actually the time was about 75 years ago, I said some people did a terrible sin. And I said, okay, but right now, there are millions of Jews living in Israel, millions of very good Jews living in Israel, of various levels of observance, various levels of spirituality, a huge variety of Jews. So, okay, so 75 years ago, there were people who did it in a prohibited way. So what do you suggest we should do? Evacuate everyone to Poland, as the anti-Semites suggest? Go back to Poland, go back to Russia? Is that what you're saying? Right?
Invite Yasser Arafat to be our leader?
You think that would be a good idea? Right? So they were not prepared for that. Right? Well, I said, yeah, let's say he's right. Now, I happen to believe, based on not my own views, but the views of many sages, that he was not right. For various reasons. The oaths themselves do not get a mention in Maimonides' code, and Maimonides' code covers the full gamut of Jewish law, from philosophy, idolatry, tefillin, business ethics, jurisprudence, etc., marriage laws, all the way through to the laws of kings, combat ethics, and the laws of the Messiah. In that comprehensive book, doesn't mention these oaths.
And he does talk about living in Eretz Yisrael. So if he was talking about how we should live in Eretz Yisrael, you would think he would have to mention this just to caution people not to all rush up at once.
And in fact, he does not. And not only that, but it is in a section of the Talmud. I mean, the Talmud is not strictly divided, but we know that there are halachic components of the Talmud, legal components, and there are agadic. Agadita is generally not a source of halacha. Ein lemeidim halacha. We don't learn halacha from agadita, right? Not that it's not meaningful, authoritative, and deep, but it may
Yeah.
not be a source for Jewish law and practice.
Yeah. Yes.
And in addition, there's also, for example, just from historical reality, was the State of Israel founded as a rebellion against the nations?
They all, except almost all of them, agreed to it.
First of all, there was the San Remo Conference, beginning of the 20th century. Secondly, there was the British Mandate. Now, conquest by war,
Yeah.
according to Jewish law, the British conquered Israel from the Ottomans. That
Yeah.
meant that the British owned what was called Palestine, Israel.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
British, in the Balfour Declaration, said that His Majesty's government views with favour the establishment of the Jewish homeland in Palestine, etc.
Yeah.
In addition, the United Nations eventually voted for the partition plan,
And it was
agreed
most
upon.
of the nations.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, the Satmar Rebbe maintains that the inhabitants of the land did not agree to this, but it's arguable,
They
and
had not a, they didn't have a government,
they didn't have a government.
the inhabitants of the land.
They were not the indigenous owners. They had come. Most of the Arabs in Israel had come from other places throughout the centuries, right? So it's really, and now the fact that we were attacked in 1948 by the armies of a number of Arab states and defended ourselves. I
That's
don't
different
think
than a
we can see,
conquest.
exactly. I don't think you can see that as taking Israel by force. On the contrary, we were trying not to die,
Yeah.
as we have done 1967, 56, 67, 73, right? Most recently, October 7th, right? And there are different visionaries. So the Satmar Rebbe's view, however, has become very popular amongst many. And I think you're right. I think it's encouraged by the vision, by the realities rather of a lot of secularism and anti-religious sentiment. Now, some would argue, a lot of the anti-religious sentiment may be blamed on segments of the religious population, right?
We both share
Yeah, yeah,
in it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And just yeah. So it's unclear, but there was a vision. There was the Drishat Sion. This is the Rav Tzvi Hirsch Kalischer, who was one of the early visionaries of the religious Zionist movement, and in his views, and also Rav Kook, they were Rav Kook is very often looked at as rose-colored glasses, but he was realistic. He understood that it's not going to be perfect, and
He
you have to
lived there. He saw what it looked like.
and you have to work through
He
that.
saw exactly what it looked like.
He says you have to utilize the negative to make it positive. You have to, like, he had this like spiritual Aikido idea. The
For
Aikido,
many who don't know Aikido, could you just take a moment to say what it is?
Japanese martial art that heavily relies on a lot of joint locks, etc. But also, one of the principles is the use of the opponent's force against the opponent. Rav Kook, spiritual Aikido, right? The force of negativity is there so that we can utilize it to move forward, right?
We can channel it, give it direction.
Exactly. He says this in many different contexts. Tamei mitzvot, but also in the understanding of Israel. So it is imperfect, and I think people who make aliyah, go to Israel, starry-eyed, etc., is a lot rarer today. I think a lot of people who make aliyah have visited Israel many times, know many people have been to Israel. They're aware of various issues and problems, and they're not suddenly confronted by a shocking fact that there are non-religious Jews here, that not everyone keeps Shabbat. That's I don't think that exists to such a great degree anymore. But
Rabbi David Foreman, at one point he was talking about Yaakov and how we attribute emes as one of the qualities of Yaakov, truth, and you have this issue where it seems like in a few places in the Torah he's not speaking the truth, like when it comes to the getting the brachos from Yitzchak. Again, there's answers. There's all sorts of discussion about this, but on first glance, it seems like he's not telling the truth over there. It seems like he's not telling the truth entirely with Esav when he sees him again. It looks like he's not telling the truth entirely with Lavan.
Hmm.
That there are all these things. So Rabbi Foreman at one point says maybe we're watching a progression. Who's to say you're not watching a progression? He he is going to represent truth, but he himself has to contend with it. In other words, you're going to watch something, there's going to be a kind of beginning of a process,
Hmm.
and you're going to be part of how it's realized. There is a dream, and maybe your dream is actually how it's going to look, but that doesn't necessarily mean those are what you're starting with. You might be part of the realization of it, and you might have to evolve into it. I know there's many ways of treating the Yaakov thing. I'm not saying, but I'm saying
Yeah,
that's one way of looking at it. Yes. Yes, this is going to be all about MS because and when you're dealing with somebody who's working on this, there's going to be challenges and struggles, and you're going to watch them go through it as they develop themselves into a paragon of MS. And it would be the same kind of thing here. I have a vision of it. This doesn't look anything like what I thought, but who's to say that it starts with the finished product? Maybe we are supposed to contribute and bring it to that.
absolutely. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, former Sephardi chief rabbi of Israel, one of the great uh, Torah giants last century,
Yeah,
has a responsum about saying Hallel, special festive prayers on Yom Ha'atzmaut, which many people do.
yeah.
And uh, so he was asked about this. One of in his conclusion was that to say it after davening, after prayers. That's actually
As a separate thing and without a
after
bracha.
when you yeah, no bracha, and right after Aleinu. So actually that's what I mean. Minyan, I was at Yeshiva University. That's what they did. That's what we did.
Yeah.
But one of his reasons um, for being not totally enthusiastic about saying it, even despite the fact that there are incredible miracles and the restoration of
Yeah.
Israel and the
Yeah.
Jews to Israel is
Yeah.
incredible, which he acknowledges. He
Right.
acknowledges the miracles. He acknowledges the incredible gratitude we have to have for God for giving us this. But he says it's very much like being in the middle of an operation, which we're very happy that we got this great surgeon and excellent hospital and nurses and anesthesiologists, etc., etc. He says, but you don't do the complete celebration until the surgery is successful. He says so. He says there's mixed feelings I have about it. He says that on the one hand, extraordinary gratitude to Hashem for what He has given us to the Jewish people, and on the other hand, we're still in the middle of the process. Okay. Now, others look at it differently. They see it as, this is Rav Yitzhak Isaac Herzog, who's the chief rabbi of Israel, first, I think, Ashkenazi chief rabbi of the state of Israel.
And Irish.
Yes, from Dublin. And his grandson is the president of Israel now. So Rav Yitzhak Isaac Herzog was a brilliant Torah scholar, also had a doctorate in history. He, together with Shmuel Yosef Agnon,
Shy.
Shai Agnon, who was a great Israeli author, got a Nobel Prize for literature, religious Jew, lived in Talpiot, and together with the
His
Sephardi,
picture is on one of the shekels, something or others.
yes, correct, yeah, one of the Sephardi chief rabbi, the first Sephardi chief rabbi, who I'm embarrassed to say I forget the name, they composed together,
Harav Uziel,
maybe Ben Sion Meir Chai Uziel, I think,
possibly.
they composed a prayer for the state of Israel. And in that prayer, they put in a phrase, which for some is controversial, that
Reshit
Barech
Smicha.
et Medina
Oh no.
Israel, bless the state of Israel, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu, the beginning of the flowering of our redemption. There are some synagogues that put in the words Shetahei Reshit Tzmichat, that it should be. In other words, as type of like they're hedging their bets a bit. In other words,
Right.
on the
Yeah.
one hand, some say it is the beginning of the flowering. Others say it should be the beginning of flowering. There are many places that say we're not saying that at all. Right?
Yeah.
A good friend of ours, Yaakov Ber,
Yeah.
used to drive around Rabbi Yoshev often, Rabbi
Yeah.
Yosef Shalom El Yoshev. He asked Rabbi Yoshev, is it the Reshit Gu'ulaten is at the beginning of our redemption. Is the state of Israel beginning of our redemption? He asked him straight out. Rabbi Yashiv said, "Zani lo yodeh, I don't know." He says, "Aval sofa galut zebavadai," but it's definitely the end of the exile. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's type of interesting. End of exile. Why? Because if we can go back to Israel, we're technically right, not exiles anymore. Now, some would say, yeah, but it's still Golos.
Yeah.
Golos meaning
We don't have a Sanhedrin. We
exactly.
don't have Nevi'im. We
Yes.
don't have a king. We don't have the conditions that would allow for us to keep Shemitah and Yovel.
So it's a what we'd say, maybe definition of the word Golos is used differently amongst by different
Yes.
people. I think
Yeah.
Rabbi Yoshev was using it in terms of it's the end of the that part of exile that
Yeah.
involves the Jews not being in Israel.
Right.
But it's still Golos in the sense as pre-messianic, right?
Right.
So that's what
Right.
he was maybe saying that the word Golos, exile,
Right.
has different meanings, right?
If you think of Shibud Malchios, the fact that we are still, let's say somebody would say, if you're still under the control of other governments, so you can't be said to, fully be living with freedom in the land. So maybe something like that.
It may
But even
be,
that, I think we're witnessing. I mean, I think a person stepping back and looking at the scenario, I think we are the closest we have been in 2,000 years to not being under the control of other Malchus.
yeah.
We are the closest by far that we've ever been. I mean, at this point, there's like a thin layer of control that the United States has over us.
But the United
Otherwise,
States has that control over other countries as well.
right.
Lots of major countries like China has control over a whole range of countries.
Yeah,
Russia has control over a range of countries. Would you say those
right,
countries are not free? They're not completely independent and free. But it's
right,
not just Israel. People single out Israel. It's not.
right.
But yeah, you're right. But
But
I
it's
think we are
only,
the
I would
closest.
say, though, even if you're saying Shibud Malchus still applies, you have to admit it's gotten
Oh yeah,
very thin.
yeah, sure. The yeah, agreed. Um, and I think that's something which is worthy of again celebration
Yeah,
and acknowledgement and gratitude to Hashem for that.
yeah,
But I think what it needs is for us, especially Jews who believe in that vision,
yeah,
the Messiah, to be contributing somehow
yeah.
to the movement of it towards that.
Right. If I see a part of it that's not to my liking, or in other words, I don't feel it's living up to it, then it should be upon me to try to get it there.
Yep.
It's definitely moving there.
Yep.
I mean, it looks like it's moving there. And
Mm.
if it's not there yet, then I should be helping it along, not yelling at it and ignoring it and trying to undo it. If it needs help, so I'll go and need help. If there are people who are standing in the way, I'm going to try to convince them to stop standing in the way, or to make something so compelling that they can't stand in the way of it. Also, Diane, the whole notion of Dayenu, that at which we find so beautiful at the Seder, that we're responsible to be grateful every step, right? So
Great point.
so
Yes.
so somebody could say, well, it's not there yet, but shouldn't we, let's just take a moment to look at everything we've just seen in the past 80 years, and also just in the last couple of years, everything we've seen, and recognize the miracles and the gratitude we should have for each one of those. How many times Iranian missiles came over in a way that looked like it was going to cause a complete catastrophic mass killings. It's terrible. Every death is terrible, but what it looked like was going to happen and what ended up happening, and the fact that Israel's giving free hand to go out against its enemies, and all these kinds of things. Each one of these things, there's more miracles that happened to us since October 7th than happened on Purim and Hanukkah.
Agreed. Of course, the Satmar Rebbe
Yeah,
would say, and he does say,
yeah,
partially in the introduction to his book and other places, that all the miracles that the state of Israel has experienced are all from the what he calls the Sitra Achra, the
right.
dark side. They are from the forces of evil that caused that just wanted to
Trick
fool
us.
us, to trick us, and
Right,
to deviate us from our
right.
course of serving God,
Right.
which is
I
deeply
have no
disturbing.
doubt that he
Deeply
sees that.
disturbing.
I have no doubt that he sees that.
Yeah,
But we unfortunately have not been trained with that kind of vision. And what can we do? We have to understand the world with
yeah.
the
I mean,
vision that we have.
yeah, and I think I'm not. I don't agree with that view. There are many sources that seem to indicate that the Sitra Achra doesn't have power in the land of Israel. So that's number one. But number two, I mean, to
I
have a
would say
vision.
if you walk into certain parts of Israel and
Yeah,
you don't think the Sitra Achra has control, you are not, you do not have open eyes.
not
There
realistic.
are quite a few places in Israel, unfortunately, and hopefully only for a little while longer, that seem to suggest if that is not the Sitra Achra, then
Well,
again,
we're not
we
saying
don't understand the
we're
Sitra
not
Achra.
saying that there's no evil inclination. There
Right.
is definitely evil inclination, but the Sitra Achra as a power that can affect
That actually has
a
control.
nation and etc. That's not
Got
right.
it. Got it.
And by the same, the flip side of that is that he also maintained that the Holocaust was a result of the sin of the Zionists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deeply disturbing. I don't.
Right. Ramosha once told us,
Yeah.
I remember him telling us, and we were both there, one of the shiurim at Orsamea, one of the vadim for
Yes.
teachers. So I remember him saying that anybody who says who's not a Navi, who says they know why it happened, is speaking gibberish.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to be a Navi to be able to say why that happened.
100%. Agreed. So yeah, we have this idea though that, and I know it's easy. We're both living. I'm living in New Jersey. You live in Illinois.
Yeah.
But we both have roots in Israel, and I certainly um, plan on going back. I'm here because Ramosha Shapiro said I should be here, and
I'm here because my wife said we should be here, and
both equal
Ramosha
authorities.
agreed.
Yes, right.
Ramosha said she won the argument. That's what he told me.
But I want to just to quote from the very beautiful Sefer Charedim,
Yeah.
who Rav Eliezer Azikri, I think 17th century or 16th century, book about the commandments. He wrote, what was it? You did Nefesh, beautiful song.
Very beautiful.
So he writes, Tzarich kol ish Yisrael, every Jew, l'chavev eser, has to love the land of Israel, and to come to Israel from the ends of the earth, b'teshuka gedola, with tremendous desire, kevo el chik imo, like someone who is going back to the womb of his mother, to the bosom of his mother. He says because he says we cry for generations because we could not get to Israel. He says so it's our obligation to look at it that way with that desire. Rav Yaakov Emden says in his Siddur that every Jew has to have a firm commitment that at some point in his life he will go to Israel to live there. And he says it could be, he says, that one of the reasons for the exile and the prolonging of the exile is that Jews don't look at Israel as a destination. They don't look at Israel as a place they want to live in. It's not in a lot of people, and I think unfortunately, a lot of people I speak to, it's not when you talk to them about moving to Israel. Maybe now the past 2 years that's changed, but for a lot of people, even deeply religious Jews outside of Israel, they don't see it as aliyah, as not something which they think about. It's just they it's a little disturbing. Israel should be
Let me
on.
also the notion that your commitment is somehow only real if you make aliyah, that also has no foundation in halacha. That I if I say to myself, I want to be there as much as I can be there. I'm living in Chutz La'aretz, and but as if I can be there, I want to be there, and then I go there. I'm living in Eretz Yisrael. I am while I'm there. Who's to say? I remember Rav Moshe used to get upset because there were couples in Koilel who continued to keep 2 days. Who they're living as a couple in
Mm.
Eretz Yisrael,
Yeah.
and they continue to keep 2 days because a few years from now, their plan is to go back to America.
Mm.
Who cares that a few years from now? Right now, you are married, your family is in Eretz Yisrael. For some reason, that doesn't count as living in Eretz Yisrael because in your mind, who knows what's going to happen in 3 years or 4 years or whatever it is. But since in your mind, you're thinking that, and Shauli, my son, what's got a psak from a Rav? I could not help myself when I heard this psak. He was married. They're planning on living in Eretz Yisrael. But since he spoke to the Rav about keeping, should he keep 1 day now? Because now they're married, they're living in Eretz Yisrael, they
They
plan on
plan
living
on
in Eretz
living.
Yisrael. But he said, I think you should still keep 2 days because you still get some funding from your parents, and you don't know if you're going to live there. Maybe you're going to move back. This was a complete like twisting of this whole reality. If you're there, you're living there and you want to be there, how much more can you ask? Nobody's in control of the entirety
True.
of what it is. So
And
why can't I think also, I'm going, I would love to be living in Eretz Yisrael. Now I'm going, I'm going to be there for a few weeks. As much as I can be there, I'm going to be there. Why is that
that may
not
be.
enough?
That may, but what I'm
Right,
saying is, if people don't even have that feeling, and that
right,
right now, by the way, just apropos of the Avnei Nezer in a very famous tshuva, he
yeah,
says that if the person is receiving their income from outside of Israel,
right.
technically he doesn't feel they're fulfilling the mitzvah of living in Israel.
Yeah.
Um,
But first of all, they're not entirely, nobody is
no
only getting
one's.
their money
It's
from
an
it.
international economy.
Right.
It's very
Yeah.
difficult. If you could be a billionaire living in Israel, and much of your business is done in outside of Israel,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Things
I,
have changed, I
I
think,
think
if I'd say.
Avner is in 19th
Right.
century
Yeah.
economy. It may have been a little
Right.
different, but yeah.
Also, I just want to qualify by saying all those post game, the Satmar Rebbe and all the post game, even if it sounds like I'm I'm saying like I'm thinking otherwise, obviously I realize if the Satmar Rebbe is saying something, I'm like a child and I don't know anything about it. But we obviously have to still be willing to speak our own opinions. But I
Korahim
I wanted
lived
to
on
get back to
Anitzah.
that thing, the thing you said in the beginning, to develop that. And when you told these people, what are we supposed to do now?
That's, I think, much more important than
Right,
discussing was it okay, was Herzl right or wrong. I had a
right.
discussion with someone recently. He says, "You
Yeah.
see, that Herzl was wrong. Anti-Semitism hasn't stopped." I said, "Yes, sir."
What are we supposed to do about that now? Yeah,
Therefore, okay. So now in his book, I know, okay, that was wrong. Why? May, as the famous line in the Talmud always, may nafka mina. What are the practical ramifications of that? Right.
right.
So, you know what? And it's type of interesting also. I heard it just on slightly off topic, but
Yeah,
not exact. I heard from David Lukens, who was an advisor to Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a Democratic senator from Hawaii, great friend of Israel, great friend of the
yeah.
Jewish people, an amazing, wonderful person who I had the privilege to meet once or twice.
And a real pleasure to listen to him when
Yes,
he's
great
talking.
speaker too.
Yeah,
So he was at a dinner with the Satmar Rebbe. It was like a political, obviously for political,
right.
and David Lukens was translating Satmar Rebbe from Yiddish to English and back and forth, sitting between the two of them. And it was around the
Which would be Moynihan and the Satmar Rebbe.
yeah, yeah,
That's who he's translating for,
correct.
Senator Moynihan. Okay.
And and it was at the time, it was years ago. There was the United States was planning on selling AWACS planes, which is advanced early warning planes, those radar planes with the radar dome on the
Yeah.
top, right,
Yeah.
and disc, and to Saudi Arabia.
I
And
remember when that
Israel
was happening.
was livid about it. It would
Yeah.
give the Saudi Arabians a tactical advantage that would, and the everyone in Israel was against the Israeli government, etc. So the Satmar Rebbe tells David Lukens, tell the senator that we in Satmar are united against the sale of these planes to Saudi Arabia. So, so he tells Moynihan. Moynihan acknowledges, and then he asks the Rebbe later. He says, I thought you were against the state of Israel. Satmar Rebbe says, I have an argument in the mishpacha, in the family. He says, but they, the Saudi Arabians, they want to destroy the whole family. I'm not allied with them. That is a wonderful attitude. In other words,
Right.
right, even he,
Yeah.
even the
Yeah.
Satmar Rebbe, who
Right.
maintained that the establishment of the state of Israel was done in sin and you cannot join the government, but he says that's an argument in the family.
Right.
People who I'm not going to ally myself and aid and abet people who want to destroy the family.
Right.
So that's something which is important to note, right? We have to, helping Israel. So I don't know what he'd say now. I'm sure he'd.
Especially there are millions. I mean, millions. It's like 9 or 10 million. How many Jews are there now? Eight,
Nine,
nine.
nine,
Yeah.
not absolutely certain.
Right. So at this point, what would you even like? It's happened.
It can't.
Whatever
Right.
you didn't want to happen has now happened. Even if you hold it shouldn't have happened, like you said, it's
Exactly.
happened. So now that it happened,
That's
what do you think we should do? Should we not be building strong Torah institutions? Should we not be trying to find bridges between from people
yeah. And even the
and
Satmar
people that
Rebbe
are
is
not
saying,
from?
even the Satmar Rebbe is saying, we should help protect Israel by
Yeah,
our votes. That's what he was doing. He was
yeah,
directing the votes in that
yeah,
way. So that's,
yeah.
I think, an important lesson that we have to have. Right? There are
Yeah,
people who have not, who don't understand this.
I agree.
Interesting. I was just discussing with my son, um,
Which son?
Arya. Arya. Um, so this idea we're talking about Zionism, etc. I mean, he lives in Israel. He fought in the army,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah.
he says, I think he says something to the effect that I'm not a Zionist. He says I'm a patriot of the state of Israel. He says Zionism was the movement to establish a state in Israel. He says done. Now either I'm a patriot or I'm not.
And what does a patriot mean according to him, do you
So he
think?
was saying to work for the defense and the betterment
Of Israel.
and the protection of the state of Israel.
Right.
Says, says,
And by state of Israel, he means the people that live in Israel.
yeah, Zionism was successful. The Zionist movement established a state in
Interesting.
Israel. He says
Yeah.
now, right? I'm
There's no
just
more
I'm,
Zionism.
I'm a Jew who's a patriot of
Right. We're
the
post-Zionist, he would say.
in some way, yeah. In other words,
Yeah.
not God forbid anti, but yeah,
Right.
post. It's like
Post-Zionist.
yeah, as people see what is I mean, when you think about it, every single Jew, even the most extreme anti-Israel Jews, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about Jews who have a consciousness of Judaism, not let's say
Right. Not
people who
that
are in the
group that,
pro-Palestinian
right.
demonstrations and so on
Yeah.
and so forth,
Yeah. Not those
right?
people. Yeah.
But normal,
Right.
sane Jews
Yeah.
believe in the sanctity of the land of Israel, in the centrality of the land of Israel, in the historical connection we have to the land of Israel.
Yeah.
There's no one who disagrees with that.
Yeah.
Right? So we do have that common feeling, right? And yeah, and I think that's something that we can cultivate and to become patriots. So
Right. So I would the language I understand why he's using it. He's a soldier. Besides everything else, I understand that language. But also I would just like slightly shift people's focus away from the political entity of it. I mean, there's nothing you can do. If you live in an apartment building, you're going to end up having to have as a board If you live in a big apartment building,
Mm.
there's going to have to be a board. You're going to have, and if you have a city, you're going to have a zoning commission. There's nothing you can do about it. You have a ton of people there. They have to have order. They have to have management or whatever it is. Like I know there are people who who would not be happy with what I'm saying, but to me, you have millions of people living there. There has to be some organization. There have to be people in charge of organizations. There's nothing you can do about it. It's impossible not to have it. So you have it. So as you said before, there's a necessary reality. And if somebody has difficulty thinking because they think of the state as some kind of entity in and of itself, with as a kind of political entity in and of itself, and they have difficulty, then shift your view a little bit, and just realize you're on in a place with millions of other Jews, and you, uh, this is, as you said, this is the reality now. We're in a place with millions of other Jews, and if it's not what we expected it to be or thought it would look like, then we have to pitch in and get us there. What are you going to do? This is the reality.
Correct.
In B'diavad,
Yeah.
once you're in a situation of B'diavad, it's lichatchila.
100%. Agreed. Agreed. Okay. So look, we're not going to resolve all
Oh,
issues.
are you saying we're not?
No,
I thought we were.
I don't think the two of us are going to resolve this. Not certainly publicly. In our private
So,
meetings, we
yes,
may resolve.
I think we have.
Yeah, but
I think we already have a couple
yeah,
of years
maybe
ago.
we'll meet in
I think it was
Chicago.
it was after um was it a hamburger at Ken's Diner? There was a point where we had solved it.
I think
I
it was at the
remember.
Japanese restaurant in Chicago, actually.
That could be. It was something, and we hadn't been to dessert yet, and we had already solved it. We weren't sure what else to do. Like, what would we
I'll
talk
have to
about?
come. I'll come to Chicago. We'll talk personally. We
Just to
don't want
finish
to
the
be.
puppy off,
Yeah,
just to
well,
get them,
because if our
to dot
plans
the
are on
I's,
electronic
cross the
media,
T's. Yeah,
then who knows who can access them? We have to
right,
speak in a way that's not. Yeah.
right.
Okay. Right,
Okay.
folks. It has been. Hopefully, if you have enjoyed this, please like it, share it with others. You can access this on YouTube. You can access this on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, on RSS feeds, on Torah anytime.
And
So
if you have an instrument that can capture sound as it's leaving our planet and moving to the edges of the universe, you might be able to catch it that way too,
yes, so people who are
by
in
sound waves.
aliens, etc. Mate,
Right.
and help us solve a puzzle here. We have one episode that got huge amount of views. It is part two of Did the Avos, the patriarchs and matriarchs, keep the Torah? For some reason, on Torah Anytime, that episode has exploded with popularity. And
Which means we have 300 views.
it was actually over 8,000, but it was very strange. If
Yeah.
anyone can I don't know,
It's a conundrum to us. And also the
very
part
strange.
one,
Part
completely
one.
crickets for the part one. Nobody
Part
cares
two,
about part one. For
my
some
theory,
reason, part two. What's your theory?
my theory is that someone's kid got hold of their laptop
And they're just pushing
and they're just pushing
view.
the play again, and they're just like doing this thousands of times
Yeah,
until the
that's for
parent
sure.
finally
Yeah.
finds them and then
No,
says,
you're
"What are
right.
you doing?"
Get
Right?
off that. Yeah,
You have
you're
no
right.
idea who this child is,
It's
but
right.
thank you,
Yeah.
that kid. But in any case, like, share, and listen, and comment. Um, Only if they're positive comments. But thank you very much, and God willing, we will see you next time.
Be well. Be well.